Welcome to the action here in the women's division, and it is getting towards the championship bracket. Our crossovers for the women's division, it's Troubles from Poland versus JetSet Luv, who've had a relatively short commute this fine Saturday morning. Myself, Hannah Pendlebury, alongside Christian Gaffney. Christian, what are we expecting from these two teams?
I think we're expecting both these teams to give it their all now that we're in the knockout stage. It's a much more beautiful sunny day here in Oostende, but there's still a strong wind factor, so I expect to see a lot of zone defense and look for some huck and set offense as we see JetSet Luv starting in the downwind direction here.
Well, both teams have very short rosters, a unfortunate set of injuries for both of these women's clubs coming into Saturday's play. So expect to see, hopefully, a lot of solid disc retention despite the conditions. But a zone to start things off defensively will generate the turnover from the block. So Troubles causing some issues with their defense starting this one off. The wind slightly less feisty than it was in the opening round of matches here on Saturday. But as you say, Christian, it is a sunny and slightly calmer affair than yesterday's real equalising conditions. A little scoop just to make sure on that one. And Luv deciding to go for a relatively passive zone. Fakes over the top, but that one is a bridge too far to be crossed. JetSet with the disc back in their hands. Linking it all together. Peters anchoring at the back alongside Verreken. And that will be good enough for the goal. A little low on that final pass, but well caught.
As expected here in this first point, a tale of two zones, both teams starting it immediately from the get-go. And we saw that Troubles had one chance to get it upwind. They're going to be working with upwind and downwind lines, I believe exclusively today. Their two upwind handlers, Monika Javskowska and Eva Banbula-Duda, are the two that are expected to be the stalwarts, sort of carrying them in the upwind direction. Whereas the Eurostar, Grażyna Cieplitska, will be more the grip it, rip it, and ship it downwind hucker with the wind.
Well, we've seen G throw those kind of bombs for best part of a decade now, I think. Certainly lots of the Polish female matching talent getting that extra bit of boost from the hosting of the World Games back in Wrocław in 2017. And it's been kind of just going strength to strength since then. But JetSet, of course, are very used to the conditions here in the Low Countries. As I say, they've not had to travel too far, of course, originally hailing from Leuven, although this is their international variant, which has a couple of roster spot differences from their local hometown crowd. So let's see if we are indeed going to get some grip it and rip it. Luv choosing to go for a more kind of cup junkie style defense when the Polish team are shooting downwind, as opposed to that very passive set that holstered them going the other way. But that one, the bid comes, but the disc does not end up in the hands. And so similar variant, we're getting more of that arrowhead passive style zone when JetSet are trying to shoot against the breeze. But that one will be dished down and away from De La Fautre. Lewicka taking her time to swagger over to the disc and takes the gainer on the shoulder. Patient, nice grab with the single hand. Lewicka taking on the mark. And high stall just about gets there, but there's going to be the stall out signaled by the mark of Marchand.
And Grażyna did have it in her hands for a long time there. She's just seeing a ton of bodies right in front of her. They're really wanting her to throw over the top, backwards or around, but not letting her have anything in front of her in that space, which is why the stall count got so high.
Yeah, definitely a very jerky release on that final pass through to Wrosinska.
As you mentioned, the commute's very different for these two teams, coming from nearby and far away Poland. There is a sort of battle beneath the battle going on here of who gets to host EUCF. I know that Poland love when it's in their backyard in Wrocław. Lately, there's been a lot of big tournaments in Belgium. Those seem to be the two big host countries these days. As we see the stall count is retracted, Troubles get their first downwind hold against the zone.
Well, we can confirm, I do believe, that actually the next EUCF iteration will be back in Wrocław. Of course, the field complex. I just mentioned the fact that there was that boon to the program by the host bid into the World Games. Of course, we now have a full 8 flush division for Chengdu next year. But actually, the Olympic sports complex, kind of as in many places, a slightly smaller iteration than for the full Olympics itself. But that is kind of why the field complexes and the sporting site in Wrocław is such a wonderful place to host events. And you can go around and do the little gnome tour, which is always a nice extra bit of colour for your experience, because oftentimes when you're playing these tournaments, you're out on a field site in the middle of nowhere.
It's true.
So this time we get that passive zone being played against Luv's downwind possession, rather than going for a more aggressive cup style. Peters with a flurry of fakes, but just ends up throwing the simple pass to Van Wyk, who finds that sliver of pitch down the sideline. The more rapid pace these O-lines can keep the points shooting downwind, give themselves more time to punch it in the other way, and that one will work out. Van Wyk finding Van Hemmerich for the goal.
Yes, and that was beautifully done by the JetSet Luv offense, having no problem with the zone there. It looked like something of a one-person mark with a three-person wall behind them. And that was the aforementioned handler, Eva Banbula Dida, doing the hard work of doing every mark for that first zone possession. And at the end here, we see a great defensive effort at the last moment to try to prevent this score. Too little, too late, but really well done with the bid.
It looks like there was a transition to match right at the last moment of that.
Definitely, but during that transition, maybe some people getting a little bit lost. The receiver in that end zone, more or less all alone until the bid comes in. Now, how we got here, Hannah. Yesterday, Troubles went 2-1 in their pool, so they come in as the 2 seed, the favorite more or less in this game. JetSet going 1-2 in their pool. They lost to both Moon Cup and Yaka, but able to get the win against Ketchup to make it into this game.
That's what we love about the 16-team format. It means that even from day one, a lot of these teams are having to grind their way through the schedule. Of course, a nice early morning rest for those who topped their pools yesterday. But today will be very long for some of the opponents out here on the fields, because we'll be playing under the floodlights well into the evening. Flebichka looking to try and take on the mark. Just goes for the simple option and then patiently waits behind the cup. Trottering around the back. Brzezinska continuing to just deliver that easy bit of reset action on the far side. And she's there again. Well, no, I tell you what, that's a Piankowska instead. Oh, that's making the disc do the hard work for sure. Great bit of vision connecting with Podgorska all the way across the bank.
And already in this early going, it's obvious that both teams are playing zone offense, but we're seeing a bit of a difference in styles here. Troubles have been going force middle, or force flat, with sort of a wall behind the mark, letting JetSet Luv play to both sides of the fields, whereas JetSet Luv is really trying to pin them on that far sideline. You see the big no-around mark here, which forces them to play in a small field. I have to say I like what JetSet are doing here in the zone.
Well, it does mean that the disc has to do the hard work, and the wind conditions have dropped significantly. It is much calmer than it was earlier this morning to start this game off. So more of a thrower's breeze. Of course, you have to really adapt your strategy and think about playing for positionality, especially when the wind reaches its height. But I agree in terms of the being a bit more aggressive, especially in the early stages of a game, to try and eke out a lead rather than the passive zone.
Yep. And as of yet, we've yet to see an upwind score, so we're on serve both in traditional holds with the offense scoring, but also in the maybe more important who can get the upwind break, which is so often followed by a downwind break as well.
JetSet immediately getting the lateral flow underway. Perhaps not the most aggressive positioning from the wing players offensively. Could really look to try and stretch the shoulders of the zone out, because these JetSet players certainly do have the throws, but they're positioning their handlers aggressively, making good yards. Van Wyk pops through to Vereka. Thinks about the challenging inside, but keeps it more simple and just nudges over the tape. Charlotte Peters being a crucial part of the mechanism.
Yes, she's getting every other touch here against the zone, really carving up the space. And again, we see Troubles is unable to stop their sideline-to-sideline movement in that offense. They're scoring a little bit easier so far, I would say. And I wonder if Troubles will adjust to try to make them play in one side of the field rather than coast to coast like that.
Well, perhaps being a bit reliant upon the idea of if you're allowing the passive swings and really notching up that pass tally rather than saying, hey, have a go, see if you can throw through the middle of our cup. Maybe trying to just play the numbers game, say, well, at some point there's going to be a drop or perhaps a miscued throw. But the way in which the 4 set of handlers for Luv are actually positioning themselves against that very passive flat mark is gaining them sort of a half a meter every pass, and that is very dangerous. So JetSet coming out with this more spicy zone as they try and force Troubles to that far sideline. Hlewicka thinking about throwing over the shoulder. That one just about sticks in the paws of Brzezinska. Great shutdown of that around lateral swing. Hlewicka again faking but not shooting too much aggression. Podgórska now, casual toss pass. Now they find the lateral, the cool. And just continuing to take that freebie slight gainer on the sideline. And as soon as Brzezinska gets there, she makes sure she takes it with pace. Now they break back and can't find the flow around, thread it through instead. Then on the go is Hlewicka. Hasn't quite managed to find a target she likes in the end zone. But it's a little jump over the tape. Might be called back. But Julia Krul will indeed get to keep the stat for the goal. And we continue to trade.
And again, we just see a very good defense, forcing them on the far sideline. Troubles really taking a lot of time to get that score, grinding with these small passes over and over again. They managed to get it. It was incredible patience and consistency. The score, 3-3 now. And the pass was from Grażyna Cieplińska.
But it was 23 total passes.
23 total passes. Wow.
For that point. So in terms of how this game has gone so far, certainly in the battle of the story of two zones, this JetSet zone is definitely asking some more questions of Troubles' offense. And
I'd say they've done their scouting homework. My inside sources on Troubles say that Grażyna is looking to huck it to her deep receivers, Julia Krul, Lucina Podgórska, and Kasia Cieplińska, her sister-in-law. But she has not thrown a single huck yet this game because she's just seeing that wall of defenders with their hands up right in front of her. They are, legally basically triple teaming her because they know she's the throwing threat in this downwind direction. Well,
if Krul's the downfield receiver, she's having to be holstered up in the handling set. Oh, but there comes the error. And we get a change of possession and another opportunity. So we had some in the first points. But the rhythm of the game slightly changes. That one takes a second effort on the catch, but conservation of greatness perhaps, as that is a very challenging one for Bain to catch. Peter's getting it started, but a swing and a miss for Verdeer. Now this one, second attempt on the defense, but, well, all the focus seems to have drained out of both sides in this point. Just going for the zip. The arm extends, but De Ketelaere cannot claim it.
And it does seem like the wind has gotten a bit gustier this point, reflected in these easy, uncharacteristic drops from both these teams. We see Monika Javskovska, the veteran thrower, with the disc.
Well, I don't mind that from JetSet playing positional. So we get another look at all of the drops so far in this point. And JetSet this time pinning to the near sideline, making the open side throw, that forehand directly into the face of the wind. Yesterday was more of a crosswind affair, but this one truly upwind, downwind. Of course, Troubles will need to be mindful of their footwork as Van Volendam lasers that one through like a javelin throw. And Troubles trying to move with the disc, keep it flowing, keep attacking so that the zone can't find its feet and set up properly. Kind of familiar, like looking a little bit like Vamos style offense you see coming out of the Latin America scene. The space is getting tighter, so they try and get some oxygen, but it causes an error. Petrovska desperately trying to chase that one down, but the wind just took it away. And another launch from JetSet. This time it will be good for the goal. On that front cone is Lorit van Henrik, and that will punch that one in. JetSet maintain their lead, and we continue to trade, but that certainly looked like a bit more trouble than before.
It does. Trouble's doing a good job of working it upwind, proving that it is possible, I think, to get an upwind score in this weather. They got a lot of passes in that direction. Still, again, stuck on that sideline, but they showed what they could do there. One thing I want to point out is that, you know, the superstar, Monika Javskovska, she's a big athlete, deep receiver usually, who's used to getting a lot of scores, but this wind forcing her into that handler space where she's doing a different role than she normally does.
Well, and not only the wind, but just the use of zone. We're seeing both teams really having to make sure that their veteran sets of hands from both the throwing and the catching perspective, because especially when you're shooting downwind, oftentimes having a really solid receiver in your reset space can be so useful, because if anything catches that underside on the breeze, having a really veteran pair of snatchers underneath it can make a big difference. So once more, riding the rails of the breeze are Troubles. And again, we're getting lots of ignition from the legs of Klibitschka, being really active and driving, trying to make every extra yard possible when they take these freebies towards the line. Now able to find that swing, but there's no continuation. Podgorska a little bit too far away on this near sideline to get it all the way around the zone. Much of that, of course, has to be given to the active shoulder of Silke de la Fortry, playing on the near side of the JetSet zone. Pushing through with some legs and dynamism. That's a good connection to Savska. And that's going to work all the way across the layout. And the goal for Troubles. Well, that looked a little bit special. Piankovska with an excellent catch, but that one just for the offensive hold. An
incredible grab by Piankovska from Szybicka. And we've seen there again, that was the second time we've seen a score go over the top of the zone from the far sideline. That's what JetSet is giving up at this moment. They're really crowding the throwers, crowding the sideline, and Trouble's doing well to see that open receiver on the far sideline, put the throw out to space, and that was really well reeled in by the Troubles receiver.
Stylistically, I love it. Statistically, that's a very difficult and low percentage option. But from a viewing perspective, I love seeing that little bit of magic.
Definitely. We want throws out to space and big layouts every day. Let's talk a little bit about Trouble's route to get here. Ye went 2-1, as mentioned yesterday in pool play. Their only loss coming to Jinx Midnight, who won the group. That was sort of a revenge game for Jinx Midnight. Much has been made about the big Troubles win in Berlin against Jinx that sort of sent the standings all askew, all awry. Jinx showing they're the stronger team this weekend. But Trouble's winning a very close game against East Block on Universe to secure the 2 seed. And we'll talk later about how it's been a bit of a topsy-turvy weekend for some of these Czech women's teams.
Indeed. Most of all, of course, 3SB, who ended up, unfortunately, being knocked out of the championship bracket, falling all the way from top to bottom seed of their pool yesterday.
And I was watching that reveal show with Raquel Točnerova, who had a lot to gain or lose because of the random draw. And she was not happy with the results of her random draw. And I think it shows just how strong that group was after all.
Well, it's tough here at the top. The 16 best women's club teams in Europe going toe-to-toe and causing some spills and spoils. But that one spills away and cannot be collected by Vereke. So some match defense. Are we getting it? Well, certainly plenty of separation downfield, which suggests perhaps not. But Trouble's playing through rapid fire, but that's unfortunate. Jakoszka ends up throwing to turf. Perhaps a little bit too excited to have such open receivers deeper into the pitch. Inside break. Oh, and that's just a drop from the non-begloved palm of Esther van Wijk. Going for the offhand glove, the throwing hand with none. So a shortened field. Ambuladira getting us started. Oh, that's a nice pass, slicing upwind. This would be a very big moment for Troubles if they can get past the JetSet defense. Boom. Recenters to Jakoszka, who of course had the throwing error on the previous squandered opportunity in this point. And Buladira just giving and going, resetting the stall. But this is fantastic containment from JetSet. And the yell from the sideline of watch out, it's coming, perhaps adding some distraction.
And I'm curious about the switch there. JetSet showing for the first time this point, playing a little bit of match defense on the upwind, but they do what you have to do, which is take away the unders, that upwind huck being so impossible, and it showed how much pressure they created in that possession.
Yeah, I like the little bit of extra help defense being played by Desmet. Love to see JetSet maybe go for the boost downfield, play again a little bit of positional offense, because their focus has slipped just a little bit, but actually they're not going to need it. But that one coming unstuck, Weybroek in a good position, but the throw just doesn't meet the measure. Timeout being called. All right, Christian, we're going to ask you the controversial question. Are you a fan of a live play timeout?
I see it from both sides. So when I used to be a captain and my D-line got a break, or got a D and had a chance at a break, I really wanted them to settle down. Sometimes you're so in that defensive, riled up, sort of aggressive state of sort of maximum intensity, and that isn't always what you want on offense. So I liked when they calmed down, got a chance to breathe, create a set play, and switch into that offensive mindset. But this weekend I've actually been doing a bit of line calling for Wall City, and in that capacity I really want them all to be saved for my line calling role. Because what I want to do in these upwind points is play as strong of a power line as I can, the team that is most likely to get the upwind break. And as soon as I do that, I want my timeout after, so that a lot of those players can catch a break, play a second point in a row, and secure that downwind break, which is really the confirmation that you need. It's not an upwind break until you get the downwind break after to secure it. So in this case, it really depends if it's about fatigue or strategy. I wouldn't back Troubles to go necessarily the whole length of the field in one go. They're really playing a field position game. But they're a small roster, reliant on a couple stars, and if they're tired, I think it's what you have to do.
Well, especially because we're now 5 turnovers deep into this point. With the knowing that when we were checking the roster numbers, I was having to press the delete button for both sides repeatedly. And in fact, I think they're almost even Stevens for the amount of athletes that both teams are bringing. So, yes, it favours Troubles, gives them a chance to just think about what they want to do, because they have had some real opportunities, but they haven't been able to get past this final sort of 4th or 5th of the pitch JetSet defense, which you have to really give them credit for. They are playing amazing containment.
Yes, big shout to the JetSet defense, who's been totally stopping them completely. I will say that the dynamic so far has been JetSet's offense downwind looks a bit smoother, but we've had more chances from Troubles in the upwind space. And my big question is, when will they cross over a power line to potentially get that upwind break?
Well, as a line caller yourself at this tournament, I'm sure we'll have to say, well, when would you, Christian, when would you be putting that in? Because at the moment we are level up at 4s and everything still on serve, as JetSet look to try and continue the rhythm with a great little bit of defense, but didn't quite get enough to stop the velocity for it to hit Struder. So Troubles with a gainer, just sliding past the defense, taking some calculated risks and paying off. Now trying to direct each other around with the old point and shoot. Vidrovska pops back to Bambula Duda. And this is great rhythm and flow. Constantly staying in touch and contact with each other, spreading the structure around, looking very threatening indeed. Now looking again to try and attack. Great recovery. But there is the break around. Dainty, delicate footwork, and the first upwind goal goes to Troubles.
Beautifully done by Troubles. They are incredibly fired up to get that first, so important upwind break of the game. Maybe they heard me talking from the sideline and they said, damn your power line, Christian. All of our lines are powerful, and they proved it there. Well, our glam cam always follows the goal scorer. However, that was a proper full 7 3-course meal. Or maybe it's a 7-course tasting menu. Each part of the Troubles team getting touches. And I just really enjoyed, Christian, the way that set a structure moved as a unit. It's so easy when you're playing against a zone, especially if you get those shots through the middle, kind of into the midsection, you run out of options. Whereas actually Troubles did a really great job of staying connected to each other, which is especially important, I think, shooting into the upwind condition. And we saw for the first time JetSet unable to pin them to one side of the field. Troubles were working it from the left to the right, back to the left for that final score. Their containment strategy, they weren't able to set at that point, and Troubles got away with the upwind break. And now this all-important second one. If JetSet are able to answer with an upwind point of their own, it was all for naught. But if Troubles can get the favorable downwind break, they've secured their advantage for this game.
Well, that's a really great pull. It can't be stopped, and we'll go all the way. So perhaps we might see Troubles actually decide to vary their zone up and be a bit more aggressive to pin to the line. Though perhaps not. They're sticking with this more passive, throw as many passes as you can. That one, a little bit of danger, and it does indeed cause the pressure. And the disc just sails out this near sideline. To Keitalara, the intended target, but it's not going to work out. Now it's a grip it and rip it for Hrebička, but she puts a bit too much juice.
And I don't hate the idea. It's a shot on goal, and they're playing the field position game. They really don't want to give a turn at midfield if they can get away with it. So forcing JetSet to work it another half of the field makes the challenge even harder for them.
Well, and this also just becomes an opportunity for essentially their D-line to try and tire out JetSet, both mentally and physically.
The only slight correction I would make there is we're seeing it's this downwind line as Gražinyć-Jablitska gets the D here.
And flirts with that high release backhand. There's plenty of acreage on the edges of this one. Can they isolate someone in the space? A little bit of double cutting in the near space for them. And there we go. There's the big gap, but coming through is the defense. Nice block from Verdeyen. Perhaps everyone having the same idea of there's quite a large gap over there. Shall we throw to it? But unfortunately, Trouble's not able to communicate with each other. Oh, that's a spicy one. Katarzyna Klebicka gets a big piece, but that does sail through. Verdeyen feeds Peters. Oh, and that's beautiful, but it is taken away, snaffled up by Klebicka. You can see why they put her on the D line.
Yes, and that was an incredible intuitive play there. She wasn't even looking at necessarily what was happening. She was responsible for guarding the marker, but saw the free person streaking up, snatched it right out of her hands.
That's also, to be fair, as we see JetSet being given, having earned, to be fair, of grinding it all the way, being given a relatively short field on the response, but that one thrown into the ground, a little bit of foot frisbee there. So Klebicka calling for some underneath options, and again you can see those arms high for all the three in the front wall. Just trying to deny that big deep shot. That's going to sail though over the head. But yes, the previous block from Klebicka, also a 8th person defensive effort. Of course, that sideline, just raising that awareness with communication. Because so many times you see those lead trust passes and the player has no idea it's there. So JetSet looking a touch frantic. They know how important this upwind hold is. Peters. Slicing through. This is good connections. Verdeyen now. And there is a bit of separation. But Klebicka hovering, gets distracted and out of position and streaking through. De Ketelaere having put in a shift during that point and not always being rewarded, clutching the goal, and that will keep us level. 5 apiece, and an opportunity for JetSet to now take a downwind break of their own.
Just when you think one team has gotten the advantage here, JetSet with their strongest upwind point of the game, marching it down not once but twice to the goal line, and the second time they managed to get it in with relative ease.
Do you think there's a psychological thing here of saying, you know, the first team to break into the wind demonstrates that actually it's perfectly doable and it gives maybe some confidence to the opponent?
I think there's definitely a psychological element of, 1, it's possible so we can do it. 2, they got one, so we need to get one. This is our most important point. And 3, I think there might just be a simpler element of the wind might have died down a little bit in these 2 points, making it a little bit easier to get that upwind grind. We can still see the flags in the background. The wind is steady, but we've had some points that are just unbelievably gusty.
We need one of the little weather doohickeys to, you know, be feeding into a graphic of just, you know, every time the wind condition changes by, I don't know, 5 notches or more, we get a little update. So a short-ish pull, despite the breeze at the backs of the D-line, but going for that pin on this near sideline, so maybe there's a little bit of theory going into that one. Trouble's having to just go for negative yardage. Now trying to nibble their way back, squeezing towards each other and making the job of the cup that little bit easier. Again, that sort of far side player, largely De La Fortry, really doing a great job of stopping the immediate swing around whenever Troubles are taking this negative pass. But again, trying to push through with their legs, but that's a foot block and a half. We're going to get a discussion about it, but Reybrouck.
Yes, and this JetSet Cup is doing an amazing job of crashing in on the handlers as they come through, taking that opportunity to get all 4 people in this little 1 meter area where it's impossible to get a throw off. Really nice adjustment as they see Troubles going for that upline dishy over and over again.
Well, Sophia Baim having the discussion with Reybrouck about whether the disc was presumably within her possession when that contact was made, or if it was after the throwing motion. So unclear from the hand signals whether that's retracted or accepted. Let's see how they all position.
Looks like it's staying with Troubles, the accepted foul.
But still looking very much uncomfortable at this juncture. Vidrovska coming in and playing some help. That's a lovely find on this near sideline. Perhaps JetSet's communication not quite working out there to identify and nullify that big gainer. Very intense, slightly physical defense from that player in the pocket. Babuladida just swiping through. Now Troubles getting it all away to the far side. And will JetSet try and pin to the opposing sideline, or try and shepherd this way? Either way, great continuation and flow from Troubles, and they make it all the way over the tape for another third upwind hold.
And the dynamic of this game has changed completely. All of a sudden, both teams getting upwinds, one after another after another. I think they've figured out what it takes to get that upwind offense. Sometimes it takes a couple points to figure out what throws are possible in this wind, what's the way we want to cut with each other. And what I really love as the adjustment there from Troubles is after an early point where they played something like 10, 15 passes in this tiny little 5x5 meter box, they eventually get one over the top up the line, and then you could see the whole field expanse in front of this 1v1 defensive matchup. And in the end, they swing it from the far side of the field back to the near side, back to the far side, and there's just so much more space to cover when they're able to do that.
It is very interesting watching that replay back as to kind of the difficulty with staying in a zone set into the smaller spaces as the field compresses, because that little slicer through becomes way more dangerous and way more difficult to defend, because you're bracketing downfield, and even the best defenders with the best communication that have been playing together on the same line for years, that smaller space, you have so much less time to make up yards as the disc comes towards you. So another roller pull, this time a bit better fielded by JetSet. Great commitment from De Ketelaere just to make sure, but not sure who that one was supposed to be thrown to, because it looked like a Troubles miscue. And a big shot reaching deep into the pocket. Great pressure underneath from De Ketelaere. But there's going to be a little discussion.
Jinx opting again for that shot to the far sideline across all these defensive players. Incredible defensive pressure here. It's a close one. Hard to say exactly what happened. The call retracted. JetSet going the other way.
Oh, that one's got a little bit too much on it. Some of these JetSet passes in the midsection of the game, shooting into that corner, difficult indeed, but that is a great grab. Just stamping those knees firmly into the softened field from yesterday.
And that is the first 2-point distance we've seen in this game. 7-5 now for Troubles. Finally able to get that downwind break after the upwind break, and they have a real advantage here in this game.
And that was just a lost blown defensive transition there. Podgorska really identifying at the moment. You can almost see it in real time there happening in her mind of, wait, I'm not being marked. Oh, happy days. But unhappy days at the moment for JetSet, finding themselves 1 point away potentially of an 8-5 scoreline at half. Although, as we've seen previously in this very championship, an 8-5 lead coming into the second half can be a rather dangerous scoreline indeed. Although as the teams take a break in the booth, we will here too, but don't go anywhere folks. This game will continue. Knockout play in the women's division.
On October 14th, 2024, the first ever World Beach Ultimate Club Championships will take place in Portugal. Follow the over 600 games as the scores update live online. And with free streaming from the Ulti TV arena, you can catch your favourite teams on your phone or from the comfort of your couch. Don't miss any of the action from Portimao.
Second half, a few points away, but at the moment it's troubles causing some issues for JetSet Luv. Both teams looking very strong and punching in downwind after downwind. But it's Troubles who took the buy one, get one free after taking the first break. And we had a series of upwind breaks and holds. But that is a solid performance to steady the nerves for the Belgian side. There's going to be a little bit of a chat, but I don't think that's going to retract the goal. Just both teams communicating about the level of contact. And JetSet staying in touch. 7-6.
And we see there in the yellow headband, this is one of the many Charlottas on this JetSet Luv team. Hannah, which Charlotta is this?
In the yellow headband?
Yes.
It's
I want to say
question.
number 70.
Number 7. Oh, that would be Charlotte Peters. Or Charles, they were calling. Anna de Barno, thank you very much earlier on the game. So we talked about some of these injuries. Anna de Barno, unfortunately, one of those players. But it's on the sidelines for JetSet, because as we said, this is Belgian turf. This is their country. Of course, about sort of a 2-hour drive away from Leuven, just east of Brussels, where certain other teams, of course, are coming from. Lots of strength in both divisions for Belgian Ultimate players, despite being such a small nation in Europe.
Yes, Belgium is one of the, if not the up-and-coming Ultimate country in Europe. They are obviously in the men's and women's division, or the open and women's divisions, really, really strong. And it's incredible how such a small country can field multiple teams that are playing at this high level, even though they could, in theory, form a super team. You have Gentle and Mooncatchers playing.
Well, of course, the Brussels have a couple of affiliations. They have some French players on their women's team and a whole cluster of individuals on that open division side, of course, Mooncatchers, as Kalajina makes a nice crotch catch, just making sure. Because, of course, you don't have to catch between your hands, just two parts of your body to stop rotation and gain control. And that's a great grab as well to close off the first half. A little bit of slip-slide action for Vidrovska. And that will close out Troubles with that buy one, get one free effect off their defensive upwind break, 8-6.
And we do see for the first time Trouble sending out a power line. They had the Eurostar Slebitska as well as Monika Javskovska playing together. And I wonder if JetSet did the same, actually, because I noticed that Charlotte Bruns, the aforementioned very strong cutter, was on for the second time in a row after securing the score. So maybe in this, as we go into the second half, both teams' seasons on the line here. I think they'll be tightening up their rosters for the rest of this game a bit.
Well, that is all part of it, the clipboard and game management. Not necessarily just putting the starlets out to shine, but also really identifying in the earlier stages of the game. And this is one of the advantages of a non-playing coach, is having somebody who can actually identify who it is that's really being those crucial cog roles, who is, you know, finding the right routes, finding the right matchups, especially because each team has their own specialism, I think, defensively, which is not something that we generally get to focus on here in the booth, because that's not really our role. That's more, as I say, of the coaching set. But in terms of the nullification of these troubles athletes, Christian, for you, if you're running the clipboard for the JetSet D line, what would you be looking for in those matchups?
Well, first of all, I think I'm going to stay away from matchup defense too much, because I really love what their trap zone has been doing so far. There's a lot more struggle there. Secondly, I'm putting my strongest players, my strongest defensive players, and what I really want to do is take away easy dumps, because something that Troubles has gotten away with so far is every time Slebitska throws the disc to someone, she gets an easy dump back. And so you might think of something like an assassin zone, where one strong defender is on Grażyna Slebitska because she's such a cog in that downwind offense. If they can make her life getting the disc back harder, they'll add a ton of pressure to this line that's reliant on one primary handler.
It has been a really interesting feature, actually, of the JetSet zone, because they are pushing towards the sideline, but when they get there, they're not really hugely committing to that proper no dump, because they have the asset of the sideline as that kind of extra bit of pressure, and they are still, as you say, allowing that kind of backwards pass, which is just that little bit of refreshment for them. So I agree, if they can really decide to take that reset completely away and say, heck, have a go with the wind, because we have seen plenty of those discs sail well too low or well too far when troubles really are under the high stall pressure on that far sideline.
Yes, and after the power line to take half, Troubles going back to their traditional downfield line.
So you see Lucia Pekarova, of course, one of the international flavour editions for this JetSet Luv side, one of Ulti TV's own, a fantastic producer and camera operator. But Troubles, of course, getting also that extra bit of love off the fact that they started the game on defense, so starting this second half on 0. Zipping back, Slebitska with a strong backhand that slices through, but great denial on the mark for the flow all the way into the end zone. You can see the step off of the mark. Just trying to stop that one, and it goes again, but that's going to be a strip call, almost certainly accepted, so a goal will stand.
And there we saw two beautiful, expansive passes from Slebitska. The first over the top of the Zona blade, and this a round, high-release backhand as the stall count rose, well reeled in by the receiver. It does look to me like the disc stopped in her hands for a split second before being pulled out at the last moment. I think accepted strip would be the right call here. Hannah, what did you see?
Well, I mean, I called it in live play. I didn't think there should be any discussion really at all. That looked very firmly in grasp. But it's not how it looks to us, of course, it's how it feels to the players. And I think the actual defender signalled an accepted stall, but they just do it twice instead.
Just a little deja vu moment. And the same result happens. Troubles up. That should be 9-6 now as they stamp their first 3-point lead of the game. Obviously, the more important metric is how many upwind breaks these teams are able to cash in. Troubles with 2 at the moment, JetSet Luv with just the 1. Now, both these teams have been figuring out how to play in this wind a bit, which is going to be so important. The winner of this game will go on to face BFD Shout. No easy match. What do you expect these teams to face when they come up against that 1 seed of BFD Shout in this next game?
More zone.
Yeah.
So actually, for either victor, even if JetSet are able to rise to the challenge and overtake Troubles, It's going to be a lot of zone. We know that the Italians love it. They have sort of 3 iterations of their zone, and their non-playing coaching sets. They don't just have the one. They usually bring about 2 or 3, as well as, of course, the decades of experience that their players bring to the fore, their captains and leaders. But yeah, that's what they can expect. Certainly, it was nice to see Shout yesterday using their full roster, maintaining pitch time at this level for all of the athletes they are bringing here, not just relying on their stars, but they certainly have a big roster. So maybe these smaller personnel squads may struggle just that little bit and with the extra game, but no struggle whatsoever for the defensive effort of Joanna Wydroszka. That was a great read and a great block.
And Wydroszka has really made a stamp on this game. She's been an athletic defender getting Ds like that, but she also cashed in that first upwind break with a nice celebration after. And she's a young rising star, really athletic player to keep an eye on in the coming years.
Now, there are some situations where the block is better than the catch. Is that one of those for you, or do you think maybe that's our only note?
Do you mean in terms of just getting a chance to set up the offense? Yeah, I think that was... I'm typically a you gotta catch your Ds kind of guy, because you see so often maybe 10% of Ds are just macked and then the offense retains possession. But that one, pretty clear. She's not one of the main handlers on this upwind line. So in a game like this where you have the lead, you have time on your side, I actually like it in this case.
Pick upfield, we'll give that one a moment of pause. I think there will be a fair argument for it to have affected, but the turnover seems to be signaled on the field.
And on the sideline, as we see here.
Well, there you go, fair cop. Just a miscue on the throw. There's the pick. 2 players stood dead still, but no one else heard them. Continued on in the turnover. Irrespective, but JetSet already finding themselves in a high stall situation, and a toss pass goes to the paws of the defense.
And this time Trouble's looking to fast break, working it quickly before the D has time to set up.
Cheeky little pop passes, taking leaves out of JetSet's books on those high stalls and saying, actually, you can throw that on stall 3 and it's a perfectly valid choice. And button hooking around just to give that extra bit of ease for the resets. And again, avoid too much in the way of negative yardage. But a little bit further away than previous upwind possessions are those kind of midsection players, as they now edge a touch in.
And despite the early fast break, JetSet Luv managed to slow it down here and get their zone set up.
Well, excitement on some of these catches. That's a great throw over the shoulder. Sudan looking for a reset, but at long last, the spice doesn't quite stay in the jar. And JetSet get an opportunity. Oh, that one is a spicy, saucy throw, but well redeemed. Floor Van Dam keeping her eyes on the prize. Now it's JetSet's time to throw some spicy options, and that one just a little bit too much boost. Sails over the head of Melissa Lee.
Yes, it was a lovely option to a free cutter, but didn't take into effect the strength of that downwind, which just carried the disc towards the back of the end zone. Troubles with yet another chance to work the whole length of the field for the upwind break. JetSet will probably be breathing a sigh of relief as Troubles was within 5 meters of getting that last upwind break. I think a break here from Troubles would probably mean the game. If they can ice it and go 2 upwind breaks up, that's really hard to come back from. So JetSet Luv, and sort of a must-win point here.
Well, a timeout being called by JetSet. A leaf out of Troubles' book, because of course they were in a very similar position when they took their break. We'll have a think about it here in the booth. Don't go anywhere though, folks. This second half will continue after these brief messages.
On October 14th, 2024, the first ever World Beach Ultimate Club Championships will take place in Portugal. Follow the over 600 games as the scores update live online. And with free streaming from the Ulti TV arena, you can catch your favourite teams on your phone or from the comfort of your couch. Don't miss any of the action from Portimao.
Second half action, and JetSet Luv trying to fight to stay in the top 8 here in the women's division at the European Ultimate Championship finals. Myself, Hannah Pendlebury, on the call with Christian Gaffney in the sunshine. We've got a nice windbreaker tent. Where else would you rather be right now?
There's nowhere else I'd rather be in this moment, except maybe 2 meters forward in the sunshine instead of in the tent. I'm a little chilly, but it's a beautiful day here. And watching Ultimate in this knockout games is so exciting. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, of course, the weather conditions much nicer than yesterday. And anyone who is residing at the Ibis Oostende Airport Hotel can tell you the stank of the cleats drying overnight this morning when you came out to breakfast was overpowering. But at the moment, the wind is not a force to be reckoned with. Troubles riding the breeze more effectively. And some of these JetSet downwind boosts a little bit overpowered in terms of just the sense to try and make it to the end zone. But a re-emergence of the JetSet Cup. This time again preventing that backwards swinging pass that just really allows that extra bit of energy. In fact, Buladida not even looking upfield, just immediately getting it away from the line to try and make the zone work and find holes to weave through it. Touch of contact, but all fine enough.
And what I love so far about this trouble zone offense is they're getting more people involved. We've seen 5 or 6 players touch the disc already, when before it was the same 2 or 3 handlers working in a very small space.
Well, a small space indeed, and that one snuffed out like a candle flame. Great defensive presence. Chambil coming through. So JetSet with a big opportunity here to keep the game within reach. Troubles, of course, those 2 breaks up. And that is an absolute gorgeous throw. Melissa Lee hits the deck and claims it. She's been playing for too long, but that's a veteran read.
JetSet keep their hopes of staying in this tournament alive with that very important downwind score. The timeout seemed to re-energize their zone, and that offense was very impressive. I don't think they ever heard a stall 2 as they worked it down the field very quickly that time.
So Lee, having picked up the sport in USCD, so UCSD, University of California, San Diego, if I get the acronym correct. So it's been throwing and catching discs for quite some career at this point. But residing in Belgium since 2022, a post-pandemic import. But we love to see it, of course. You mentioned the tournament being over, Christian. Of course, there are consolidation bracket games for these teams to play through to just find those final positions in our top 16 in Europe. But some tournaments and some sports, once you're out of the bracket, you go home. Would you like to see that happen in tournaments?
I think in Ultimate it's great to play the placement games all the way through. Ultimate is a growing sport. A lot of countries have growing new programs, and it can be so valuable to get those games for 11th or 12th place against teams you don't always get to play against in your sort of locality or region at this level. So I think it's really important for the growth of the sport. I remember getting 9th for the first time, being happy with that. My first 5th place finish was a huge milestone. So teams work it all the way through the standings as we see a huge D from JetSet Luv with another chance to get this upwind break they so desperately need.
Well, if you don't play every moment of the game, if you give up too early in the course of your tournament, you don't give yourself the opportunity to make defensive plays and potential comebacks like that, because this is the moment where JetSet could grab themselves an all-important upwind break. Klibicka hits the deck, finds herself out of position and allows suddenly an opportunity to emerge, but too much on the disc, and Esther van Wyk cannot reel it in. So a squandered opportunity, and now JetSet are going to have to try and apply so much pressure, like all the layers of a trifle, to try and stop Klibicka, who immediately grips and rips. A little bit of finger touch from the begloved palms of Sophie Matthijs just pushes it that extra distance.
And that's just a pure strategic field position play. Make JetSet work it all the way up this field once again, not risk it with a short field turnover.
Well, there definitely seems to be a little bit of extra confidence injected in this JetSet line. They are moving nice and aggressively against the front set of the zone. Oh, but Klibicka. No, that's not Klibicka, sorry. That's not a 4, that's a 77. Julia Kroll this time, getting a horizontal.
An incredible defense on that under.
And a high Huck and hope to the front line. My goodness, what a throw that was, arcing in the sunshine, and Troubles hold on and snuff the hopes of that JetSet Luv attempt at a comeback.
An incredible defensive intensity there. We saw 2 big layouts from the Troubles players. The first from Klibicka, unable to get it, and JetSet went the other way because of the player on the ground. The second one pays off as they get the short field. An incredible D from Julia Kroll.
It's a cruel summer here in Oostende. Although, have we officially moved into autumn yet? Has that happened?
The first time I put on a pullover, it's autumn for me. So I'm a sort of September 10th guy. I can't really handle the transition. But this is a bit of a beautiful late summer day, you might say.
Yeah, that extra bit of breeze just by virtue of us being in a coastal part of Europe. And there's a little bit of shade being thrown by some of the players on their social media accounts coming into this championship, saying, why does the EUF keep organising tournaments for very windy coastal places? Of course, that was also a factor of the World Championships a couple of weeks ago down in Australia in Surfers Paradise. Handy hint for you, wind is a key factor in creating surf and waves. So perhaps our friends slightly closer to the equator in Europe, maybe a bit more inland, can bid for some of these wonderful championships. Oh, that's again the temperature being sent up by Troubles, but that's a cool, smooth reception. Again, JetSet relying upon Elizabeth de Kertela to bring in some of these bigger discs.
Esther van Wyk with another important point, throwing the beautiful downwind pass. Last time I saw her at Paganello, she was reading 100 Years of Solitude at the Beach Cafe, but this time I'm sure she'll be embraced by her teammates rather than being alone after that beautiful pass. We'll have to check in with her after the game to see if she finished that one. It's a bit of a long read.
Definitely a feature of Ultimate players, though. We have lots of folks who pick up the sport whilst doing advanced studies, many university teams sort of recruiting, but a big part, of course, of the Belgian program, why we are getting so many of these teams rising to the top, the creme de creme of Europe, is the junior development and some of the second generation athletes who don't have a choice. They have to play Ultimate because mum and dad did. Libicka absolutely sending it. Huge, huge throw and perfectly weighted dynamically into the bread box of Lucyna Podgórska. And it looks like those two may have been playing for just too long to stop at this point.
Yes, showing off Grażyna's Eurostar cannon. She can throw it to the end zone from anywhere on the field. She has the green light from her teammates. In a tournament like this with so much wind, I believe she has license to throw turnovers. It's not the worst thing in the world if you throw a downwind huck that doesn't work out, but this one an absolute beauty. She's played enough beach tournaments to know exactly how heavy wind works, and that's just a beautiful throw, beautiful grab. And both these teams really figuring out the wind, which, as you said, is going to be so important in this next matchup against Shout.
Well, sideline viewers are gimbal cam scrambled off the pitch. That's how fast that offensive possession went down. I mean, you have to say, the look on Grażyna Libicka's face when she actually realised that Podgórska had that much separation downfield, I think there was some blown coverage. There was certainly a dash from Floor van Dam to try and get anywhere near the intended target, but you can't be letting someone escape to the deep space when Libicka has the disc in her hands that quickly.
No, no, no.
Almost looked like a set play. So JetSet just trying to hang tough. They still are just those 2 breaks of score down, but just really raising the temperature in this rather chilly, windy game. And you can see the confident swagger of Zakowska as she walks towards the disc to put it in play. But that's a very enviably short field for the JetSet O-line.
Yes, confidence not the only thing you need in a situation like that. You also need a good throw to an open receiver.
Maybe too much confidence.
Maybe a little too much confidence, but she's earned it. She's an incredible player.
Now Surely trying to go for some isolation, and it is just a run and gun straight out of the stack. The pure speed de Ketelare has been demonstrating across the course of this game and gets another. That's her 3rd goal for the game to add to the 1 assist.
Yes, and I believe that was another throw from Charlotte Bruns, who's been putting in incredible work this game. I've played with her at a beach tournament with Good Lord, and she's a no-nonsense, efficient player, incredible offensive talent.
So JetSet still within grasping distance of a top 8 finish, but starting to run out of clock here. Just over 20 minutes remaining of regulation time. We're back to a 90-minute time slot. Yesterday was slightly curtailed just to make sure we didn't get any overrunning games in the rather sloppy conditions.
You asked me earlier in the game when I would, as coach, put a power line on. I think right now is now or never. Get all of your best upwind throwers, put them on a single line together, expect a turn because of these windy conditions, and get that upwind break you so desperately need.
Well, we are getting a couple of changes of personnel, and here is a big opportunity. De la Fortrie smiling at the field in front of her. Of course, has been a big force in women's ultimate for decades. That one may sail out of bounds, and it will just about. A great chase down from Saskia Chambly, but not to be.
And I love the look. Sometimes if you can get power position with a backhand against this wind and a shot on goal, that's so much easier than working it with 20 more passes. So I like the look. Just sails out of bounds at the last minute.
And it also demonstrates that actually JetSet can rip it against the wind. Very difficult to execute that same 3rd huck, but yards is the name of the game, I think, for Troubles finding themselves that close to their defending end zone this late in the game.
Yes, a pure punt there from Troubles. Not pretty, but very strategic.
Oh, Chambly with a little bit of riser on that disc. Bereke. Lovely find through the zone. Now can they stay connected? Vandela. Little bit of give goes. Nice lateral swing. This for a proper bit of excitement. Slicing forehand, just about hanging tough for Matthijs. Huge gainer into open yards. And the lead, but confusion, miscommunication, and a second squandered. Real chance for JetSet Luv.
That was a golden opportunity. They marched it all the way. The wind died down a bit, and they're unable to convert it there. Two receivers, sneaks in between both of them. Unlucky for the Belgians.
Well, that's a solid find. Just taking advantage of the spread of the zone. A little bit of directional point and shoot, and that goes over the top for Cool. Thinks about the ripper backhand, does Folek. Slavicka reaches high but can't quite get there, and there is a spill on the potential redemption for Palmer. And a timeout being called by Silke de la Fortrie to try and set up something a little bit magical and earn that upwind break. Now this, I'm not sure about strategically of taking the timeout here, just by virtue, Christian, of the fact that your opposition is going to be able to put out exactly the defense they want, and we are in quite a valuable field position.
I also think that point, their offense was so smooth because there was a bit of a lull in the wind, and by calling the timeout, you risk that wind coming back. Now, one thing I want to see from Troubles on this defensive effort, they were getting a bit too far away and a bit lazy with their marks, which allowed a lot of backhands on the flick side of the field. You really want to make people throw flicks in wind like this. You don't want open side backhands. So I'd like to see them tighten up really quickly on those marks, because that flick into the wind is the hardest throw right now.
Seems like this is where those lefty handlers really earn their keep, because you can basically put your right-handed handler on the left-hand side of the pitch and your lefty handler on the right-hand side of the pitch. So both sides, especially going against a zone where oftentimes one of the options to break through a zone is throwing around it, that gives you that extra advantage, because that curvature of the disc is going to go back in bounds rather than sail out the sideline.
Yes, Wall City has picked up Ferdy Rogers from Ireland this year, and he's of course a great lefty handler, and it's made such a difference in this weekend as he's able to get those backhand hucks when they think they're trapping you on the flick side.
So hydration being acquired on the sidelines. Both teams able to take a moment of repose. And the chant of defense from the Troubles sideline as JetSet try and bring themselves back to level. Because of course, if this game were to just trade the amount of breaks, it would go in the favor of the home team.
Interestingly, it looks like something of a 2-3 zone in the front. Now getting back to traditional cup.
Well, patience is required, but that is, oh my goodness, rescued from behind. Matthijs with a great playthrough. Well, that's something to get us a little bit excited here in the booth after some very stoic offense coming out of the timeout. Oh, and that's a spicy one too, but great eyes on it. Not enough of aggressive positioning attack from Silke de la Fortrie, and it's snaffled away from Podgorska.
And the same defender there knocking it to the ground with two hands twice. The first one didn't work out as she knocked it right to the defender. Second one goes to grass and she gets the D. So great pressure from her on this point.
And lack of activity from the downfield as well from JetSet. Not being aggressive enough to hold their lines and close those windows of opportunity.
And now we see a match defense for the first time going downwind. Doesn't stop Grajina from shooting it.
And I like that catch block allows the immediate yard gainer to de la Fortrie, who does get a little bit frustrated at the lack of opportunities being gifted by the rest of her team. Perhaps they are expecting a more slow start. But a quick counter-attack, many defensive coaches will say, is the preferred strategy. But the lack of focus and the drop for Van Damme. And an enviably short field, almost from their own brick mark. Klebitschka getting in play. And that almost looked like it was going to be too easy. Cool. Back to Klebitschka. Couple of easy resets still being given. Brzezinska just playing that supporting role, allowing the high stall reset. No one really marking her, but also not communicating with the mark, saying they can be more aggressively flat. Now the around found. And you can really see where Klebitschka wants to attack, and it's the break side, unsurprisingly. Is this JetSet team, their coverage and containment has largely been in virtue of their athletic presence. As we have just a bit of a stumble and an injured hand. Marcela Folek coming off the pitch and being replaced with Jarkowska. It doesn't look like JetSet will be taking a substitution.
Which is interesting considering what a long point this has been. The players looking quite tired out there. A lot of hands on knees, walking slowly. The sub here should be a big opportunity to punch this break in. Sorry, this hold rather.
Maybe committing to that that power line originally called. But I'm with you. I don't like it as a strategy, but I do like that throw very much. Sits and hangs a little bit too long and is taken away by the defenders. So another opportunity for JetSet to try and grind out this upwind hold. 2 timeouts per team per half in these European Ultimate Championship finals. I think they still do have one in the pocket if they need it.
And what I'd like to see from this JetSet offense is working it quickly side to side. This Troubles team has been out there for such a long time. It's hard to keep playing defense on such a long point.
Now that little pinch in, kind of trying to double up the deep. Oh, that could work, you know. It could be perfect. It's not quite over the tape, but what a gainer. And it's supported as well. Just standing still in the end zone. And Sophie Matisse puts that one on the board for JetSet. The upwind break with just under 13 minutes to go. Wow.
And what an incredible saga of a point. Everything hanging in the balance. One of our longest points this game. JetSet showing the resolve to get that goal line defense even after the superstar sub comes in. And they work it all the way against that tired defense with one of their most beautiful offensive possessions. Off to the races, as we can see here. The gorgeous huck to space. Just on the goal line. As we see Vandela getting it to Floor Van Damme for the all-important upwind break.
And that's really unfortunate for Lucina Podgórska. You could just see that step off. She's aware of the fact that she needs to track the offensive player behind her, because that's the person who can actually score the goal. There's no point having the mark on if there's someone wide open, but just loses the footing a little bit and allows that final open one. But it was the confidence from JetSet to put 2 people spreading that deep. And once they got through the front set, off they went, as you say, to the races. So if JetSet can now deny Troubles a second time, we're going to be back on the level. Bit of face marking being exploited. Of course, Bamboula Dida, one of the big throwing presences, keeping things connected. The dot-to-dot here for Troubles.
We see them coming out in match defense as the wind has died down a bit, trying to put on that person-on-person pressure.
Well, and pressure indeed. Obviously less so outdoors than you have in indoor formats, but playing zone is more of a game of being patient to get the block, and that's a great rundown, turning on the Jets of Vidrovska. Going for the around, but there is indeed that pressure spilling over. Esther van Wijk with a great match.
And we see Vidrovska making the incredible layout grab to get at her athleticism on full display, but having a little bit of trouble getting that dump off in these windy conditions.
Well, Peters throws the reset. I wouldn't mind some positional going for it. Van Wijk has opportunity. Now it's Lee in wide open acreage. Taking on potentially the aggressive swing, but I love the mark from Sweden. Just going for the no around, really strong. That one a little bit squirrely. And things slightly slowing down upfield. A slightly late switch on the mark. Matthijs staying on, and that's the double break. We're back on serve. Oh my goodness, the end of this game is getting spicy.
Wow, JetSet Luv fighting back, showing incredible resolve, getting the 2 breaks in a row. 11-11. What an incredible game we have here. Both these teams not going away, wanting that BFD shout matchup in the quarterfinals and wanting desperately to make that top 8. Who do you think the momentum favors here?
Oh, well, the momentum clearly favors JetSet. You've just gone for the run of the 2 breaks, and if we compare and contrast to earlier in the game, obviously Troubles got that first break, but then it was followed by a series of upwind holds for both sides. Whereas this one, it's kind of the narrative of seeing that grip on the game start to slip.
Let me ask a different question then. Which team would you rather be in this position? Given that Troubles have the advantage of the wind, but JetSet have the advantage of the momentum.
I would prefer to be Troubles because of the wind. But yes, the momentum question, I thought, for me, is maybe a bit too easy. But yeah, it's the wind position at the moment is definitely very useful, especially because we've just seen a lot of the players for JetSet Luv come out to do back-to-back to get both of those breaks in. They're now using a little bit more depth of their D-line, which now that Troubles, of course, have the power line out. You've got Hlivicka, you've got Bambuladida, you've got Krul as your 3 anchors at the back.
And Zavskoshka coming over for the crossover power line as she has the disc now.
Yes, indeed. So finest athletes from Poland, and they do indeed punch it in, but this one could go all the way to Universe. And now it will be JetSet with the slightly easier job to just punch this one in downwind. And if we remember the beginning of the game, their downwind offense looked a lot slicker than the Troubles one.
It's true, it did. And there we see a really composed, confident response from Troubles there. They've just gotten broken twice. They're cool and collected. They put a power line on, and they score with relative ease. Now the pressure back to JetSet as they have to get this hold to stay alive.
Well, this is the one where maybe you put for JetSet some of your stars on the sidelines to give them that extra bit of rest, readying them for the other potential upwind break. We still do have just under 10 minutes remaining of regulation time. So this one could still go all the way to the maximum points cap of 15. As Troubles ready themselves.
And a strong JetSet line coming out here for the all-important hold. Esther van Wijk is at the last point out after getting those 2 breaks. She's been such an important part of this offense. Let's see if she can make an impact here.
They don't take the freebie for the first moment of the offense. Verreek sends that one through, but what a defensive block that was. Hlivicka, denial. Although it's less of a river on the field site than there was yesterday.
And that was Katarzyna Cieblitska, not to be outshadowed by her sister-in-law Grażyna, showing her defensive prowess as they work together at this point.
Szakowska just takes the conservative option to Hlivicka, who's the opposite of conservative. absolutely dazzling throw for Julia Krul, and that one will put troubles back in front. They deny JetSet that easier downwind break and say, if you want this game, you gotta fight for it.
And that was a gorgeous upwind throw by Slabitska to get it to the break side huck just in that front corner of the end zone. And I think you can see from the distance of that pull, which made it all the way to the opponent's break mark, the wind has died down a little bit, so those upwinds are a little bit easier to get in this phase. That's good news for JetSet, as they need this next upwind break, but it means that confirmation score after you really have to work for. It's not as easy as it was earlier in this game.
I want to throw back to an earlier point that you made, Christian, about Glazina Klibicka and the impact she can have for troubles, because part of the reason, and it was the same third huck against the wind, which is much lower than it was earlier stages of the game. However, the aggressive dump positioning to be like, actually, I'm going to be all the way over here because I've identified that the wind is lower, and therefore I'm much further away from my matchup, and I'm also deeper into the break side. And that is kind of how that play worked out, because they allowed, again, that free, because you think, oh, well, that's a very long pass to have. Everyone else can maybe adjust upfield, and it's a negative to lateral swing. It's maybe not that valuable. But when you have a power thrower taking that aggressive move, I feel like you've got to maybe think about being a little bit more precious about just stopping Klibicka from getting the disc at all in the late stage of the game. We haven't really seen her pushed upfield very much.
I think it's a big strategic error. It both allowed her the free dump, she didn't have to work to get it, and the unmarked backhand, the mark being so important to make pressure on those upwind throws. And Grajina, she's a friend of mine, so I feel like I can say this. She's been playing for a long time. There's a lot of wear and tear on those ankles. She's got 2 big braces down there. She doesn't want to have to work in the backfield space to get open for a whole game. It's a lot of work to do that. And so to gift her that free dump so she can just step into a backhand, that shows to me a lack of adjusting to her game at this point in the game.
Well, there's the stats. I mean, 7 assists for troubles, 13 all over her. I'm not sure if necessarily our turnover count is completely accurate, because she has had a couple that have hit the deck for sure.
Yeah, 0 turns feels like she's friends with the scorekeeper.
Friends of all. She's a wonderful human. So JetSet looking to just stay alive here, conceding a break. As we see, a very tight mark from Klibicka. I would say perhaps a little bit illegally so, because your feet now have to be a disc distance away from your opponent. There's a nice little diagram on the WFDF rules Facebook to explain a little bit more about that.
And Podgorska applying tremendous defensive pressure there with the layout attempt.
That's a reaching, leading throw to the break side. Love to see that shot. JetSet Luv keeping things interesting. Nice handling of that slightly errant one. But that's going to hit nothing but the deck, trying to connect with Perakova upfield. So another big opportunity, as we have just over, or just under 2 minutes remaining of regulation time. Klibicka just sauntering over to the disc.
Looking for her tremendous 8th assist of the game.
And she has a deep cut to throw to. That one just an inch away from the outstretched paw of Monika Żakowska.
And exactly as that huck went up, we heard the time is over from the official sideline scorekeepers. So we will, I believe, add 1 to the score after this point.
Indeed, so either a game to 14 or 15 if JetSet Luv can punch in this all too valuable upwind score. That's a beautiful series of throws, and they take on the spicy option. The layout's not required because it's perfectly weighted, and Lien de Sept keeps the dream of a top 8 finish alive for JetSet Luv. So game to 14, they're gonna have to punch in that downwind break. So power lines for both sides.
That was a beautiful throw upwind from Floor Van Dam. Again, the unmarked backhand, not able to get the mark off to stop that throw. Beautifully done. And after that, the hard work of Julia Kroll on trouble. She laid down on the ground for a solid 30 seconds. These teams are exhausted after a long 90 minutes of battling.
Yes, you have to think that, especially knowing who the opponent is in the next round and how big the roster is for that team. The Italians, of course, and we're talking about BFD Shout if you weren't already familiar. They have always bring a very fully flushed roster and have been maintaining their sort of injury status pretty well. Of course, both of these squads in front of us have been very unfortunate to suffer a couple of knocks over their journey through the pool stages yesterday. But if you're calling lines for troubles right now, knowing that actually you don't need to score the next point, you do have one match point to burn, how do you manage the clipboard?
That's a great question. I'm going to put on my strongest power line. I'm going to put on a team that can score upwind. I believe I still have timeouts in my back pocket, so if it doesn't work out, we can take the timeout to catch our breath and get that next offensive point. But I think I'm also going to say, let's put on a bit of a lazy zone if the turn happens. Let's not overexert ourselves playing crazy intense match defense, but let's try to score upwind and throw a zone on if that doesn't work.
So Troubles looking to just punch this in, a do or die situation for JetSet Luv. Hlibitschka with Silke Delafortri, an elite handler matching an elite handler. We love to see it. Delafortri now nullifying, pushing Hlibitschka upfield. But they find her. Now Żakowska. Beam. Resetting to Van Bouladida. Oh, so close to getting the run-through block. Delafortri again inches away from the palms of Hlibitschka. Troubles being forced to work hard for every single drop of offensive action. And is that in bounds? It's called good from behind. And that indeed looks like it is going to finish us off. Joanna Witrowska with the goal. We're going to have a little chat about it, so it will end with a sigh, not a bang.
And that was an incredible grab on the low throw, a hard, fast laser at her feet, and she manages to grab on. Let's see if she's in. To me, it looks like the shins and the knee came down first in the end zone before the arms fell outside. Is that what you saw, Hannah?
That's what I saw in live play, Christian. But it's not how it looks to us. We don't have currently a replay monitor for the folks on the field, but the self-officiated sport, they'll chat it out between each other.
Are you advising that I not lift my hands above my head?
You need one from each team.
Yes.
Oh. I forgot you're the coach.
Yeah, it's me in. Yeah, you just say on your team.
So, well, we actually have had two players, well, a coach from JetSet Luv and a Troubles player review the slow-mo footage in our booth. So that will wrap it, folks. Troubles 14, JetSet Luv 12. It nearly went to Universe, but what a fantastic game that was, Christian.
Yes, a tale of two halves. The first half almost impossible to score upwind. The second half, both teams doing it with relative ease. These conditions coming and going, but a really hard-fought game from both teams. I thought the comeback from JetSet Luv showed a lot of heart, a lot of potential. They'll be gunning for the 9th place finish from here on out as Troubles secure the chance to play against Shout in this quarterfinal matchup coming up in a couple rounds.
Indeed. Well, both teams with relatively curtailed rosters. Hopefully that doesn't take everything out of the tank for JetSet, as you say, and they will be able to have the comeback for 9th, because 9th in Europe is still a pretty good title and something to have lots of pride for. But hats off to Troubles. What a game they played, especially some of their younger athletes really coming to the fore. The hands like glue for so many of those amazing catches. But that will wrap us for the women's knockout games, the crossovers into and out of the top 8. Next up on the slate, we're going to go into quarterfinals. The bracket begins for the mixed division. Here on pitch 24, we've got Seskidistas versus Savage Ultimate, who had a heckin' game this morning, really snuffing out the flame for Padova. And then Deep Space and Reading Ultimate. It's a UK matchup we're very used to on pitch 23. Any insight for those ones, Christian? Which one will you be watching?
I'll be watching Wall City preparing for their next game. I'm officially transitioning out of my commentator role and into my full-time line calling. It's too much pressure to do both at the same time, so I'll leave it to the professionals here at Ulti TV to take over the job for the rest of the tournament.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for your work, Christian, and thank you for watching us. The little match stats of this one, though, such a tight one, but really it was all about the finesse from the Troubles O-line.
Yes, and we can see here Troubles getting 10 more break chances than JetSet Luv, putting on so much pressure. A turn-filled game, but the most important thing, who can get those upwind breaks? Troubles winning the battle 3-2, and you can tell just how close that game is. JetSet have a lot to be proud of themselves for in this game.
Well, that will wrap us, folks, but don't go anywhere. We have all of the games here from fields 23 and 24 at the European Ultimate Championship Finals. We'll see you for the next one.
Trying to get your attention, you make me nervous. In the corner of my best friend's sofa, you were getting by some rum and cola. Wasn't brave enough yet just to